Hey there, me again. In today's video, we're going to be doing a little bit of film scanning, and to do that, we're going to use VALOI's new easy35 film scanning setup. So let's get into it. So when VALOI announced that they were making this film scanning system, I decided to reach out to them and ask if they wanted me to do a review and test the system out and see what I thought about it. And they said that would be great. They just needed production to get going before they sent out a unit for me to test. And once they did that, they sent this to me, and full disclaimer, I don't have to send it back, but they're not paying me for this review, so my opinions are going to be my own, and if I find something that I think doesn't work that well with this system, I will let you know. So, let's talk about what comes in the box. So, in the box, you get the main body of the VALOI easy35 film scanning setup, which is basically just a 35mm film carrier and a light table, all in one compact package. Other than the main body of the easy35, you get a set of extension tubes, so no matter what macro lens you're planning to use this with, you should be able to find a combination that works for you. You also get a set of 7 step-up and step-down rings, so no matter what the filter thread size of your lens is, you should find something that works in the VALOI kit. You also get a standard 35mm film holder, a 35mm sprocket film holder so that you can scan with the sprocket holes, and a test target that you can use to check focus before you start scanning. Another interesting attachment that comes with the easy35 is this brush entrance to kind of get any excess dust off of your negatives. I try and clean my negatives pretty thoroughly before I start scanning anyways, but this is a nice little touch. So now that we've gone over what's in the box, let's talk about the gear that I'll be using in tandem with the easy35. So to scan these negatives, I'm going to be using my Sony a7 III with a vintage Vivitar Comine 55mm f2.8 macro lens. I've been really impressed with the performance of this vintage lens, and the fact that it is a true 1-to-1 macro lens means I can get really close to the negative and almost completely fill the frame with this lens. So that'll be good for getting the highest resolution possible. Also by chance, this lens has a 62mm filter thread, which is the native filter thread size for the easy35. So I don't have to use any step-up or step-down rings, and that just makes this whole process a little bit less fiddly. Once we get the film scanned, we're going to be using Negative Lab Pro to convert the negatives, so let's get scanning. So I went through my archive of negatives and picked out a handful of photos that I thought would be fun to scan again and compare against my scans from my Epson V600. After that, I attached the film scanner to my lens using one of the longer extension tubes that came with the kit, and then I set the light to the settings that are recommended for color negative film, as that's what I would be scanning. So we were using maximum brightness, and for color negative film, we were using the coldest color temperature setting. I also set my lens to f8 to get the sharpest image I could from corner to corner. In terms of other camera settings, I was using aperture priority to account for any difference in exposure that I would get when scanning different negatives, and I was also using a 2-second self-timer so that I wouldn't introduce any camera shake into the photos when I was scanning them. After that, I opened up Lightroom and started converting the negatives with Negative Lab Pro, and I used the same settings across all the negatives so that there would be kind of a uniform look and uniform results. And here are the settings that I used for Negative Lab Pro. And now, without further ado, here are some comparisons between scanning with the easy35 from VALOI and scanning with an Epson V600. hope you guys enjoyed that little comparison between a bunch of different negatives on a bunch of different film stocks. Some of the negatives turned out really different, and some of them turned out looking pretty similar. I didn't really do any color correction on any of the negatives just because I also wanted to show you what Negative Lab Pro does to different film stocks with the settings that I used. So hopefully that's a little bit of extra information for you. And yeah, I'm really, really happy with the results. I think this scanning setup got much, much sharper results from the negatives than my Epson V600 did, and also slightly bigger files. So I think in the future, I'm probably going to be using this quite a bit, especially when I want to print my photos. Also worth noting, I did do a little bit of sharpening in Lightroom afterwards. It would be about the same amount of sharpening that I do to my negatives when I scan on my Epson also, so just wanted to kind of keep that uniform as well, and keep it kind of a fair comparison. So now let's talk about the good things that I really enjoyed about the easy35 system. So the first thing that I really, really liked about the easy35 was it holds the film very flat. I didn't have any issues with the negatives popping out of the film holder or anything like that. I didn't try the sprocket holder, so I assume there might be a little bit more issue with that just because it's holding on to just that much less of the film negative. But in terms of using the standard carrier, it worked amazingly and kept the negative super flat, so I got pretty sharp images across the frame, and any sort of loss was probably more from the lens, and I only really noticed a little bit of drop off on the very, very edges of the frame. So I'm really, really happy with the results overall. I also like that the light source is adjustable and that they give you directions on how to best use the light source for different types of film. I think that's very, very handy, and props to VALOI for thinking of that and doing some tests and experimenting to see what works best for different films. Also, the biggest thing that I really, really like about the easy35 system is it's just so much less fiddly and cumbersome than, say, a copy stand setup that a lot of people have been scanning with for the past couple of years. I think it's just way more compact because you're screwing it directly onto the lens, so you can scan anywhere, you can scan on the go, which is very, very awesome. And also, it's just way easier, I think, to keep everything level. You don't have to level the camera and the scanner separately and make sure they line up. And two, I think it's going to be way easier to not introduce camera shake, as if you shake the camera, you're also going to be shaking the scanner the same way. So I think there's a little bit more flexibility. You probably don't have to use that 2-second self-timer like I did. I just wanted to do it to be safe. And also, it seems like a very light, tight way to scan film. So hopefully there's no light leaks or anything when you're scanning with this setup. And it's just really well thought out, really compact, and I love that. Now let's talk about some of the stuff that I think is not so good, could be upgraded or changed or added to over time. So the easy35 is 3D printed, and that's good for keeping the cost down and keeping the weight down. But there are a couple drawbacks to this 3D printed design. One is it feels a little bit cheap, and two, the fact that you've got metal parts as well, like this threaded ring on here rubbing against the 3D printed parts, makes it kind of flake away and leave some flakes on the light source, which is not ideal for film scanning.
Flaky, I like flaky out again.
Now, it is helped a little bit by the fact that you can take the light source out to clean it, but I think it would be nice in the future to see this system made out of metal, and I don't know, maybe you could have two versions of this, one 3D printed and one that's made of metal, and maybe have a kind of two different price points. I don't know. There's got to be a solution though, and I think making it out of something other than this 3D printed material would be a little bit better. Another thing that I had a little bit of issue with when I was scanning with the easy35 was this locking screw didn't seem to work very well. I think that's probably because it's just trying to lock this threaded ring against 3D printed material, and it's not that sturdy. But yeah, it didn't stay in place. It's not that big of an issue because you can just lay the camera flat on a table. This is a square design anyways, so this lays pretty flat too. And I didn't have any issues scanning, it's just I would like to see that be a little bit more sturdy. Also, something I would like to see added to this is the ability to scan 120. I know it's called easy35. Maybe you could have easy35 and easy120 to scan medium format negatives. But ideally, I think this would be a really, really powerful system if you could scan 35mm and 120 all in one. So that's about it for my review of the VALOI easy35 system. I think this is a great option, especially if you're somebody who shoots a lot of 35mm film and you just want an easier option that's not as fiddly as something that uses a copy stand or a tripod or something like that. This is going to be much quicker to set up and much easier to use, in my opinion. And also, I got way, way sharper results than with my Epson V600, so I am really happy about that. And I'm actually working on a project right now, and I think I may be using this to scan all of my negatives for that project. So we'll see how that goes, and that's about all I've got for you. Big thanks to VALOI for sending me the easy35 to review, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.